Thinking of investing, working, or starting a business in the cannabis industry? We've got you covered right here on Plant Problems. Hosted by Tony Frischknecht, Plant Problems takes a different approach to cannabis than what you're seeing and hearing from the mainstream media. Come along with Tony and be in the know about how to invest, work, or start a cannabis business. Let's get the show started with your host, Tony Frischknecht.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Plant Problems. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. You know, there's a lot of new patients and customers that are actually starting to look into the world of cannabis. And, you know, we have a lot of people throughout the world are longtime users. They've been using for a long time. But there's also a huge market of new users that are starting to come onto the scene and ask questions, and whether they're using it for getting them off of certain medications or they're using it for recreational. You know, there's so many types of people out there, and understanding your customer as a dispensary owner or a grower is a huge part of this. So what I've decided to do is I'm actually bringing a new user on to the program today. I've got Brooke Bevan here. Brooke, it's a pleasure to see you, and thanks for being on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks so much for taking a few minutes and kind of opening up what your thoughts are, because you haven't used for very long. And I hope you don't mind that term, but I mean, actually, whether you're using medically or recreationally, we'll talk about that. And I think it's something that is kind of overlooked. You know, we're in this mass rat race right now in cannabis. Who can grow faster? Who can get more product? Who can, distribute wholesale? And so I think it's a great time to have you on and kind of explain, you know, from a new user's perspective on what they think about cannabis. So, Brooke, what type of environment did you grow up in when you were a kid?
I am from a farming background. My family has been in agriculture all my life. To this day, my parents still have a farm that they run. And so I grew up just being very active on the farm, helping out. And it's one of these things that it kind of sticks with you kind of forever, the whole mentality of hard work. And
Yeah, when you're talking of agriculture, did you ever experience cannabis growing up at all?
never. I didn't actually know what it was until I was like in high school, and I went from a really tiny school. My grade 9 class had 9 kids, and then I went to a high school that had 98 kids in my grade 12 class. So it was a big shift for me. So the drugs and stuff, we never heard about it really until high school. And then it scared the crap out of me. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. So if they were talking about it or doing it, I was avoiding it like the plague.
Why do you think you were so scared at the time?
Um, when you're young in a small town, you hear about the juggies who were always getting arrested. They were always getting in trouble. And it was, you hang out with those people, you're going to end up in jail, blah, blah, blah. That was the whole thing growing up. So it scared me because I was a good kid. I tried to follow the rules most of the time.
Yeah, I completely understand that, and I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there that can totally relate to not wanting to break the rules. You know that it's an interesting time because growing up as a kid, you don't really understand, well, what's drugs? I've never experienced it, so our first logical notion is to be scared of them,
Mhm.
you know, and we tend to do that throughout our entire life because we're just scared of the unknown, which is it's kind of, it's not very open-minded, like, okay, let's actually see the facts and understand that.
Yeah, there was no facts growing up with it. You saw it in TV and you saw it in movies, and it was always that like person who was just not in their head at all. It really didn't give you a good representation at that time, and that was the media as well. Like they never showed the positive aspects of it.
So over the last year, how much experience or what did you really know about cannabis, let's say a year ago?
Oh, a year ago, I knew nothing. I knew that the people I didn't hang out with, who were always giving me troubles, were the people who were usually on it. And you can ask anybody who hung out with me or who knew me. I was very negative against cannabis. If you were going to be using, I didn't want to have anything to do with you.
So it sounds like you had a very strong stance against it.
I did, and a very uneducated, strong stance.
Okay.
I didn't want to know it. I didn't want to hear about it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to smell it.
So then what was your next step when you were why did you start exploring cannabis more?
Well, it actually started with me opening my own business. I made the conscious decision that I wasn't going to be negative on people for different viewpoints of myself. I was going to give them the benefit of the doubt and give people a try. And depends, like religious politics, it didn't matter what it was. I was going to give them a try. And then that's where I met you through work. And you are nothing like I expected when it came to cannabis. So I'm like, oh, this is something new, so let's give it a try. And as you started to educate me in the business aspect of it, then I really started to look harder at it and then start to make more logical decisions, because it is about education. The more you know, it completely changed my viewpoint because I learned more.
So is it okay if you share, did you grow up in a religious family at all?
Semi. My dad's not religious, but my mom is. So we did go to church on Sunday and all that jazz. And yeah, it was.
Was this a big factor in kind of deterring you away from cannabis for so long?
Surprisingly, it wasn't. It wasn't something that really thought about it, but for me, it was just not knowing what it was and knowing that to me, I was always told it was a negative thing. Like
Okay.
just from all around me, it was negative, negative, negative.
Yeah, you know, so many times I hear people use the word as demonized, and it has been for
Hmm.
so long.
It has been.
And Europe and Canada, so the Canadians tend to be, at least to us Americans, tend to be a little more laxed and laid back. So it's interesting to hear that you've still felt a lot of that pressure growing up and in the environment you were in.
Hmm.
So when did you first try cannabis?
Oh, I tried cannabis for the first time in March. Uh, my doctor was talking about moving me on to permanent medication for my PFS, so patellofemoral syndrome, and for some injuries I've earned as a child. Um, and I hated the idea of having to be on a pill every day because the meds I was already on were making me sick and groggy, and I was not feeling very good. And I just wanted something that was not going to make me ill all the time. So when cannabis got legalized, it was something I was kind of peeking at, but I was so scared to be seen looking at it is a word to. I didn't want people to know what I was doing because there's such a still a negative impact on it, especially in workplaces. So um, I kind of peeked at it, but oh no, I'm not going to look at this. I'm not going to look at this. So um,
What did you have any discussions with your doctor at the time?
I didn't, because the doctors still were not really talking about it then. There wasn't enough information out to the doctors yet. It wasn't till about a year into it being legal that the doctors did have a lot more information and were willing to look at a different alternative, and depend on how um, liberal your doctor was depended on if they were going to talk about it or not. If you had a really religious doctor, they wouldn't talk about it at all. But my doctor was ready to try alternatives, and was willing to look at stuff for me because he knew I didn't want to be on those pills for the rest of my life. So when he
Well,
looked at the cannabis,
you guys
sorry,
have socialized medicine, right?
yes. So
Okay.
we pay for some of it, but for most of the part, the government covers quite a bit of it.
So is cannabis, do they cover that right now?
If you have a doctor's note, yeah, it's covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So if you're like on cancer and stuff like that, and your doctor is prescribing to you as part of your treatment, completely covered.
okay. And here in the US, we had a lot of scared doctors too. And then we had a few of them that they would create little places for you to get your prescription. In Colorado, I know California was very similar. I'm imagining there's a lot of states are doing the same. Are there specific doctors that you're able to visit for this, or is it all in the socialized system?
It's all in this. Right now, like even before it went legal, there was still medical marijuana was very popular. It's still something that doctors did, um, and there was very specific vendors that you had to go to with your documentation to prove that you needed that stuff, and then you'd get it through those vendors.
And
So they were.
did you know about this before March?
Yes, the medical marijuana has been around for a while, but you had to be a really severe case to get onto it.
You had
You
to,
had to be really severe, so you had to have a cancer or some sort of really dangerous disease for your doctor to want to prescribe that for you at that time. So
okay.
it was pretty special cases for that.
So was there some fear that was kind of built up from these special cases at all?
Not on my end. I just didn't think that my issues were big enough to be considered a real case to be able to apply for it.
Okay.
Because usually they're very scrutinized at the time. Like before everything went legal, you really had to have documentation. You had to have years of tests behind you, and you had to be really sick to be able to get onto those programs.
Okay. So it sounds like you knew that it was helping people,
Hmm.
but it was more in severe cases more than anything at this point.
Yeah. So, and I didn't know too much. Like I said, I knew people who were using to help with their cancer treatments or help with their MS. So, um, and I didn't begrudge them that, but I thought it was a special type of cannabis that they were getting. It wasn't the stuff that was on the streets. So,
Yeah, you guys have had quite the different experience because of coming down from the federal legalization down.
mhm.
We're just kind of backwards, which it's tough to see the parallels because we haven't experienced federal legalization. So, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the US that would love to know the government would cover some of their medication if they could.
Yeah, yeah. Our government's pretty good. Like some stuff we still have that's not considered life-threatening, we still have to pay for, but for the most part, most life-threatening medication is covered. So.
Is okay, so you took it in March. Let's talk about that.
Mhm.
Walk me
So
through your experience here. What did you do? Did you go to a store first? Did you get it from somebody and try it? How did
I I got brave and actually walked into one of the new dispensaries that was put up. Um, I have a friend who likes to smoke it. He doesn't talk about it. So when I kind of said I was kind of thinking maybe to go take a look at what they had, he's like, "Hey, let's go." So he actually and
we
I
had
went.
somebody take you?
Yeah, he knew what he was
Okay.
talking about. So he took me and I went in, and the staff was
Was it
phenomenal.
was the store on like a main street?
Yes, it's on one of our. We have dispensaries on every major road and in a lot of smaller communities. They're everywhere. They're like I hate to say it, like liquor stores. They're on every corner.
Okay, so and
So
you live in a pretty small community, right?
yeah, I live in a small city. We have about 100,000 people. I think at this point in my city, we have probably 12 or 13 dispensaries.
Were people upset when they started popping up in town?
Yes and no. Um, we are a very religious city. We are now kind of a Bible belt, so we have lots of religion here. So the religious people were very, very upset. Um, but we also have a high kind of a liberal count of people as well. So the liberal people were really excited to see it show up and be legal and not a bad thing done in a back alley. So we had a really 50-50 split on the whole environment of it.
What have you seen over the last 6 months in your town?
In the last 6 months, it's really kind of mellowed out. They're kind of just like a liquor store or a cigar shop. They're kind of just there now. People just walk by them. They don't think too much of them. The kids might go, "Hey, mom and dad, what's that?" But other than that, there's really not much fanfare anymore to them.
Do they have, are they pretty in particular in how they look? Do they look like the rest of the other businesses? Do they blend in? Do they stick
Yeah,
out?
they blend in pretty good. The only thing that they have to do is you cannot see into the business from the outside, so frosted windows. But they've made them very bright, I think is the word. They're very nice to look at. A lot of the buildings in our city aren't just individual buildings, they're like mini malls. So we have lots of those around. So they're all anywhere where people congregate, they have basically one of these dispensaries, and they look lovely. Like from the outside, they're just like any other business you'd walk by.
So let's go back to where you were walking in the store and you had a friend take you.
So I had a friend take me. We walked in the store, and there was 4 staff that were on attendance. It was one of the bigger ones in town. And so I walked in. I have no clue what I'm doing, and I'm kind of scared to be even seen in the store. But my friend was like,
So
"Hey."
what do you're scared to be seen in the store more so than
Yeah, it was
okay.
one of those things where, again, it's a smaller city, so everybody knows you. It's going to get around that you were seen inside the building, um, especially going in and out. It was kind of, you're almost shamed is a word that you're thinking in
Okay.
your head.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go in, take a look around, and then just leave. I just want to see what it looks like inside. It's kind of like the little tourism thing where you're like, hey, that's different. Let's go take a look.
What was the first thing you were shocked by when you walked in the store?
Um, how open and bright it was. When you think about it, you think it's going to be kind of dark and smoky, and it was nothing like that. The regulations for the dispensaries is you're not actually allowed to smoke or test anything in the stores, period. So there's no testing. But it was very clean. Everything was almost surgical to a look. So everything's easy to keep clean. It's bright. It was very airy. Um, and it wasn't cluttered. Like everything was on display, but there was no boxes for you to go pick up. If you wanted something, you had to go order it at the counter and they would bring it forward for you. But everything was in glass. There was nothing out for you to touch. Everything was in a display case.
So it sounds like it was pretty normal business really if you were in the retail world, right?
Yeah, especially if it's a high-end product, right? So if you're going into a jewelry shop, all that stuff's behind glass because it's expensive and could walk away really easy. It's the same thing in the cannabis stores here. Everything was just on display, and if you wanted something, they would pull it out of the display case to show you. And uh, it was very much like that jewelry shop where you had one of the salespeople would start with you, greet you when you walk in the door, and stay with you through your entire purchase.
Did you find that was pretty comfortable for you?
Yes, I found that very comfortable, and um, they were super friendly and helpful. Like they didn't come off as the typical druggie, you know what I mean? Like they didn't have that feel to them. They were very dressed nice. They were all cleaned up. They had colored hair and tattoos, but they were very vibrant people. But they were very knowledgeable about what they're selling and their products. So when they found out I was a first-time person, they actually decided to do an education session with me. So they explained to me the different types of strains, what everything was, what this did, what that did, how things worked. And they spent some time with me just talking about what the different stuff was, because I didn't really have a clue of like the different types of stuff that there was available.
So it sounds like that was pretty helpful to you.
Yeah, it was. And it really, I found that the more I spoke to them, the more I got to ask questions, the more relaxed I got into the store. So by the probably middle of our exchange, I was actually ready to try something. Like I
Okay.
was like, okay, I can do this. I can make a purchase and try something.
So had your friend not gone with you, would you have walked in the store by yourself?
I probably would have, because I was sitting there staring at it for like half an hour in my car going, I can do this. And then he's like, hey, what you doing? Let's go for lunch. I'm like, well, I'm kind of sitting here and I'm kind of thinking about going in. He's like, oh, I haven't been in one yet. Let's go together. So I waited for him and we went in together. So
So if there are people out there that are kind of stuck because they're scared like you were, and they want to go, they don't have anybody to go with. Do you have any recommendations, like how they would approach the store situation? Would they make sure certain things on the store or look for particular items?
Um, I think as someone who was very not sure of everything, I go in with a little bit of a plan to try something small. Like, be brave. Um, there's a lot, like, because we're in Canada, our dosages are quite a bit smaller than what I believe they are in the States. We are heavily regulated, so they're not going to sell you something that's going to hurt you. And that was one of the things that the first salesperson said to me was, if you're going to try it, start small and then slowly work your way up. Don't go in and expect to try everything at once. So for me, my first try was a cannabis hybrid pill. So it was an oil pill, and they're like, just take one today. When you get home, just take one and see how you feel, but don't take any more. And then tomorrow, if you want to try it again and you didn't kind of feel anything, try taking 2 this time. But try it. She goes, be experimental with it. She goes, try it on an empty stomach, try it on a full stomach, try it in the morning, try it in the evening. Find out what works for you, but try it slowly, which is very encouraging. So,
Do you remember what the milligram was that you were trying?
oh, I think the first one I started out was the pill I had was 10 milligrams.
Okay.
Yeah. And I remember the first night trying it, and I didn't really feel anything, but it occurred to me after that I did because I slept. I actually went to bed on time. So that was really big. And the
Sometimes you kind of
next,
forget you took it.
well, that was kind of the thing. I'm like, okay, I took it. And then about 11 o'clock, it hit me. I was really tired. So I'm like, gosh, I'm going to go to bed. So I went to bed on time, like on time, not at 3 a.m. So, but the next night I took 2 on a full stomach. And again, I didn't think I felt anything, but again, at 11 o'clock, I was ready for bed again. So I went to bed on time. The third night, I took 2 on an empty stomach. I felt that one. That one, I really quite noticed the difference because I was playing video games when that happened, and I'm like, I have to get off. I have to go lay down. So that was quite the experience for me on the second try, or third try.
So you've taken it a couple times, and I assume you've tried some new products.
I have.
What have you found? What have you found kind of works for Brooke? Like,
What
have
I
you found
like,
specific things that you
yeah,
like?
for me, I was heavily on T3s to handle some of my pain issues, and I was completely able to go off my T3s completely. So I take the cannabis hybrid before bed. Um, I find if I take it before it makes me sleepy, makes me go to bed on time, but I don't wake up sore. That was a big one for me. Like, I wasn't getting out of bed going, oh my God, what's happening today? And then as I consistently started taking it, yes, I was getting more rest because I wasn't hurting. And especially working for long periods of time as I do, I was getting less and less sore. So now I can do a lot more things without being sore just from that one pill. Um, so that was really nice. Just recently, I switched from the pill to the oil, just
What
to
type
try
of
something new.
yeah?
Um,
What type of
it,
delivery system are you using with the oil?
it's just a syringe. So I just fill the syringe and put it under my tongue, and then I sit under my tongue, and um, it's not giving me the same effect as the sleepiness I was getting through the pill was. So I think it was maybe a different type of oil that they were using, but what I did find, I was sleeping way better than when I was even on the pill, but I wasn't getting tired on it. So I'm still trying to determine which one I kind of want to go with more, but it's the experimentation of trying them and figuring out what works better. Um, but I was kind of going, if I didn't know if I was going to like the oil because I was wondering if it was going to have a taste.
Oh yeah, yeah. Did it have a taste?
It does have a little bit of taste, but it was kind of different. Like, it wasn't a bad taste. It was kind of a little bit woody to me. So it didn't bug me at all. And I'm not adverse to taking it, which was nice because I'm like, oh, we'll see what happens.
So you've also, I mean, it hasn't been that long that Canada's been able to
A
allow
couple of
edibles,
years.
right? Edibles are just recently.
As yeah, just recently, I think they came in April, I think, that they passed that law that, and then they did it in sections. So only this province got it, then this province got it,
Oh,
and
okay.
it opened up that way. And because they didn't have enough for every province, so they had to do it a little bit slow because there just wasn't enough product at the time to get everywhere.
Do you have a big selection or a small selection?
We have a very small selection. Um, as of right now, I know for edibles we have, I think, 2 types of gummies, a couple types of chocolate, and teas are really popular.
Teas,
Yeah,
like just
tea.
cooking and drinking hot tea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The also they classify the pills as edibles. So yeah, I think we were lucky because we got a shipment of pills in March when I first started, and then the chocolates and the stuff came in April.
So, would you say you were a little more comfortable with actually eating it, not smoking it?
Yeah, I can't smoke it because I have asthma, and it would induce an asthma attack with my lungs. So, edibles was something I definitely wanted to try, and it's something that it was orderless, and no one would know that I would take it. So it was definitely important, especially with my roommate situation. My roommate didn't want any cannabis smoked in the house or around the house, and that was something he was really adamant about. So
So, has your roommate been pretty open about okay with
um,
what you're doing then, or no?
he doesn't really care, long as he doesn't have to interact with it or smell
Okay.
it. That was a big part. I think he didn't want to have to smell um, the smoke. And
Yeah.
that's kind of a thing that most, because his work, if he goes to work smelling like it, he gets random drug tests and get in trouble just if they assume he has it. So
Yeah, there's probably a little paranoia in there because
there
you
is,
did.
especially in his position, because he is a supervisor in his job. So if he goes in smelling like smoke, it could potentially be damaging to his job. So, and I know a lot of the jobs, especially where you have to be drug tested, if they even assume that you are doing anything, you get tested way more often.
Gotcha. So you've been trying it out for since March, so it's August now. We're looking at it's almost well, yeah, for beginning of August, so
6 months, yeah.
6 months. So what have you learned over the last 6 months?
Um, it's not as scary as I thought it would be. Um, I really started to learn about the properties, what it can do for you. Um, I've never realized that the plant was so versatile. Like, not only does it help, like for myself medically, but for the plant can be used in so many other ways, such as like textiles and feed for animals, and the whole thing was outlawed at one point, which kind of blows my mind. Like, and you realize that it's probably the most versatile plant in the world, and how many people it can help. Um, I just didn't realize until I started actually looking into the stuff that how ignorant I was about the whole situation. And anyone who could ask you now about me is that I'm very open about it. I do talk about it now. Um, People are like, "Oh, you're one of those users." I'm like, "Well, yeah." And then I'll invite them to be educated on what it actually entails versus what they think they know.
Hmm.
And once they start to learn, um, all of a sudden their minds are more open to looking at it for different point of views. I have one friend who went, like, she was on a cocktail of drugs, like 13 or 14 a day to handle her illness. And they cut it down to 4, I believe. And she does edibles twice a day now to migrate her issues. And she's been way better for it and less sick because they were giving her medications to counter the reactions of other medications.
Yeah,
So it was like this horrible snowball effect.
that's the unfortunate part of medications. I know a few people in my life have had um, different transplants, like organ transplants, and when you start looking at it, they've got all these drugs you have to take, anti-rejection drugs, because your body won't naturally accept an organ that is foreign from your body. So you have to take several different medications, and they have these adverse effects. And so you're taking another medication to offset that medication, and it's like dominoes. It's crazy. And then, and then there's also one that, let's say one of your drugs is, oh, by the way, side effect is heart disease.
Yeah. Well,
It
that was
blows
with
my mind.
her. Like, because when I started talking about it more like with authority and knowing that I actually researched this stuff, I actually learned about this stuff, she actually went to her doctor and go, can we try this maybe? Like, she goes, I'm really sick and tired of feeling like I'm sick and tired all the time. So, and her doctor was actually really good because he did decide to even try, even though he didn't know enough at the time, but he did some research and, oh, let's take this off and try this instead.
Are you
So,
aware if the government is actively researching the plant on like doing grants and stuff like that right now? I'm not.
um, I don't think there's grants in research, but I do know, actually, that might be a lie because I just believe the University of Lethbridge got a large grant to research
Okay.
cannabis.
Yeah, you're up in
But
Lethbridge, Canada, right?
yeah, Lethbridge, Canada, and we have a really nice university here that does a lot of medical research. A lot of breakthroughs come from there. So I'm pretty sure that there was a doctor there that just got a grant to do some research. But I know a lot of grant money was given to new businesses that were starting up to get people ready to when everything went legal. It was supposed to be legal Canada Day a couple of years ago, but they just couldn't get the regulations in time. And I think it was October that it got regulated for us.
Okay.
So,
So if you were to talk directly to a business owner that was either starting a store or has a store that they're running, what would you tell them would be that you would like to see if you were to enter a store that from a customer's aspect? What do you think really stands out to you that you like?
um, for me, it was really a friendly, like your staff being really friendly, and being professional. Like, that's a word I'm going to throw around is not show up to work in torn clothes or being messy looking, but being clean, not clean cut, but cleaned up enough that you're being that professional because you are that professional. You are going to be the face of your industry. Those frontline people that are greeting those people when they walk in the door, and being very uh, bubbly and hopeful really puts somebody at ease. Someone like myself, because I don't know what I was getting into when I walked in that door. And if someone's going to greet me as soon as I come in the door and just be really friendly, ask how things are going, really made a difference at my end.
That's
Because if I
awesome.
walked in the door and someone ignored me, I would have walked right back out the door and never gone back.
Yeah, the I talk about this in another episode, but what happens is, from what my experience, what I've seen is, as business owners, we get very busy and just making sure the processes are running. And it's very easy to forget that we are selling a drug, so it sells really easily.
Mm-hmm.
But with the added competition that you have in the industry now, you have to remember that not only do you have to grow the best stuff, but you also have to have customer service behind that.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate you pointing that out
Yeah.
because I think it's huge for these new states that are coming on board in the US and these new countries
Mm-hmm.
to understand that there is a very finite time in the industry where you can get away with just selling cannabis, just like selling everything you can. But there is a time where it'll wash out, where all of a sudden you have competition. You have people that are running real businesses.
Yeah.
And for those out there that are listening right now, if you like, well, you're kind of against the man or the government and you don't want much to do with it, you want to sell weed legally or cannabis legally, I should say, then you need to understand that this is a business and you need to take it seriously to attract customers like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because at the end of the day, you're a much bigger market than these people that have been smoking and using for decades.
Mm-hmm. And another thing to think of, especially when it comes to politics and religion, is keep it out of the business. And then don't disclose your clients outside of the business. One of the things I've really noticed from talking to some of my clients is that they're taking the product because a doctor has said you need to take this product, but they're in a religion that doesn't agree with it. So they're taking it because they trust their doctors, but they don't want people outside of the building knowing they're taking it. So if your staff or even yourself see them outside the building, you shouldn't greet them. You shouldn't say, hey, how's it going? How do you like your product? You should ignore them completely because you don't know how that will affect the person outside that life.
That's a very good point. I think it's a great way to end this. So, Brooke, thank you so much for your insight. I think it's very valuable looking at it from a new person. Some of the guys that have been in this industry for 5, 10, 15 years, we forget. We get very desensitized to being around the product. Being around Colorado, there's smells all over the state. Like you can literally drive in from the mountains and drive into town, and you're like, I know I'm home because I smell cannabis everywhere you drive. So I think pointing that out, that just to be discreet, and also know that, guys, this is the beginning. So in Brookstown, it's very discreet, but you'll find more and more people start opening up. And then that'll start kind of laxing out a little bit. It won't be as big of a deal.
Yeah, we're fairly new yet. So give it 5, 10 years. We never know where we're going to sit with it. Exactly. Maybe we'll be big as Denver one day.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere. There's so many possibilities right now. So, Brooke, great having you on. I want to let the listeners know that if you guys want to check out more about Brooke, please visit plantproblem.com. Look in the episode and we'll have notes there, and you can click on her name and it'll link right to her. And I hope that this gave you guys a good insight on who your customer is or who your customer is going to be, because taking this info right here and trying to map out how your store is going to be or how you can improve, I think should be it should be something that you think about more than just like, I'm not sure. Also, take some of the things that Brooke says, and if you don't like them, just grab a couple that you like and start using them. So, Brooke, thanks so much for being on today. And listeners, guys, I love talking with you guys out there. I hope that that you were able to gain something from this episode. I even learned something new from Brooke. So thank you so much, and I look forward to sharing my next episode with you. Have a great day, guys.
You've just listened to another insightful episode of Plant Problems. If you like what you heard so far, don't forget to tell your friends and colleagues. For additional resources or to leave a review, head over to plantproblem.com. Join us again next week on Plant Problems with Tony Frischknecht. We look forward to having conversations with you as we go along this journey.